Let's quickly get you up to speed now with the conflict in the Middle East as that deadly Israel-Gaza conflict rages on. A month after it started, there are growing humanitarian concerns in the besieged Gaza Strip. Hospitals are on the verge of collapse, and this is due to overcrowding, a lack of fuel supplies, and one of the affected facilities, it's called the Al-Quds Hospital, which has reduced most of its services due to fuel shortage. The hospital has about 500 patients and is housing thousands more people who are displaced within the Gaza Strip. Let's get some detail now on the impact of this escalating war, and we're joined by Palestinian Red Crescent's Nebal Farsakh. Nebal, thank you very much for your time. So more than a month since this... Yes, good morning to you too. More than a month since this conflict started, over 10,000 people in Palestine, or should we say on the Gaza Strip, have been killed. What can you tell us about the humanitarian situation on the ground?
The humanitarian situation is dire, is devastating and heartbreaking. As you just said, over 10,000 were killed. 40% of them are children. 70% of them are children, women and elderly people. Among that, there is still thousands of Palestinians who are still missing under the rubble. Rescue teams can't even evacuate them because they don't have the equipment and items that will help them to evacuate them from under the rubble. Among those, also over 1,200 children who are still missing under the rubble. Every single corner in Gaza Strip has been under intense bombardments. There is no safe place in Gaza. Israel occupation forces have targeted schools, hospitals, residential buildings, homes, infrastructures, roads, everything.
Yeah.
There's no limits. Everything has been under intense bombardment. Now the situation, over 2 million civilians in Gaza are denied access to food, water, with no power for up to 1 month. No power, no medicine, nothing, no fuel, nothing, and unfortunately, they soon will be with no medical services as well.
Yeah.
Half population, 1.5 million, are now internally displaced in Gaza Strip. Now, the situation for the hospital is in the worst case. Literally, hospitals currently are collapsing due to the increased number of injuries and wounded people that are admitted to the hospital every hour. All hospitals have severe shortage of medical supplies and medicine, as well as running out of fuel.
Yeah.
At least 18 hospitals out of 35 have already went out of service, either due to bombardment or because running out of fuel. As you mentioned, Al-Quds Hospital, which is run by the Palestine Red Crescent, unfortunately, yesterday we have to cut off, reduce most of our operations in the hospital. The main generator for the hospital has been shut down, and now we are only using the small generator. The surgical ward at the hospital has been shut down. The MRI section also has been shut down. Even the generator for oxygen, also we had to shut it down, and now we are relying on oxygen generators. We were supposed to completely run out of fuel yesterday.
Yeah.
So in order just to give us few days ahead to continue providing our life-saving services for those who are currently inside the hospital, our patients, that's why we had to do these steps in order just to push us a couple of days. We had also put a ration electricity schedule just to have, basically there are 3 buildings for the hospital. So now we are distributing the electricity, having electricity just for 2 hours for each building in order to allow over 14,000 civilians who are currently sheltering inside the hospital to do their basic needs, for example, charging their phones or do some cooking. The situation, it can't be even described. The previous days, today for the third day, there's no bread in Gaza City and in north of Gaza.
Yeah.
So we were unable even to bring bread to the hospital. Now our major challenge also to provide food and water for patients and for the staff. We are just extreme shortage even of food and water for both the patients and the staff and even those 14,000 civilians. It's just and so much hard even to bring food for them, especially taking into consideration this is the fourth day Al-Quds hospital has been almost isolated from the rest of the area because all roads that leads to Al-Quds hospital have been closed because of the bombardments. Most buildings were demolished and the roads too. So basically they are now closed from all areas.
Okay.
So no one can go out from the hospital or to the hospital.
Nebal?
On top of that, intense bombardments have been taken place near the hospital. So now our emergency medical teams who are currently inside the hospital can't go out from the hospital to reach the wounded people and save their lives.
I want to talk about the trucks that are bringing in aid. The American government spokesperson speaking overnight, suggesting that over 100 of these trucks have entered Gaza in the past 24 hours. Is that aid able to reach hospitals such as Al-Quds?
No. This is the point from the beginning of the escalation and after in the entry, the aid getting into Gaza. There is 2 points. First, the aid is absolutely not enough. It's just a drop in the ocean. As I mentioned, it doesn't fulfill the needs of over 2 million civilians who are in need for food, water, medicine, as well as fuel. It doesn't fulfill the needs of all hospitals who are now still existing and suffering from extreme shortages of medical supplies and medicine as well as fuel. The total aid that has been entered, it's barely 3% of the the regular before the escalation. Usually more trucks were getting into Gaza. So the average day of the entry of humanitarian aid after the escalation, it's almost 2 or 3% from the aid that was getting into Gaza before the escalation on a daily basis. It absolutely doesn't fulfill the needs. Second point, up to this moment, not even a 1 liter of fuel have been allowed to get into Gaza Strip, which is our major challenge now, because fuel is just the life. And the third point is none of the humanitarian aid is getting to Gaza and the north, because basically Israel is refusing to allow the transporting of aid to Gaza and the north. None of the humanitarian agencies were able to transport the aid to Gaza and the north because even the road, it's not safe at all. Israel is targeting all the trucks that is heading from the south to the north, trying to completely isolate Gaza and the north from the south. For example, just not yesterday, the day before, an ICRC convoy, which has 5 trucks, was targeted with, they opened fire, Israel occupation forces opened fire on an ICRC convoy, which has life-saving supplies for hospitals as well as food and water. Yeah. One of the staff, the driver, was injured, as well as they had to leave one of the trucks at the middle of the road, and then the convoy continued with other 4 trucks. They were able to deliver aid to a Shifa hospital. They were basically planning to come to Al-Quds hospital, but because of the attack, they changed the route and just go to a Shifa hospital. And up to this moment, we have not received any aid in Al-Quds hospital. Although the situation is horrible, now we can't even afford having food for our patients and staff. 14,000 civilians are struggling to have also food and water. Most of them are children and women. Regarding the fuel supply, as I just said, the expectation was yesterday completely running out of fuel, but because of the rationing program where we are in now, because of reducing most of the operations, this will give us a couple of days ahead, few days ahead. We hope that we will not be forced to completely shut down Al-Quds Hospital in the upcoming few days if aid has not been allowed to get into Al-Quds Hospital. We appeal on the international community and all the humanitarian organizations in the world to try their best to arrive the aid, to allow the entry of aid to Gaza City and the north, including Al-Quds Hospital. Because basically, now for over 3 days, all people in Gaza and the north are unable to find a piece of bread because all bakeries have shut down because they run completely out of fuel. And the situation is simply dire. Those two areas, Gaza and the north, are under intense bombardments. Hospitals are in dire situation. We are running out of fuel, working with a very minimum medical supplies, trying to save people as much as we can. But basically, once the power will be completely shut down because running out of fuel, that means hundreds of patients who are currently connected to life support machines will lose their life. Babies in incubators, over 120 babies who are currently in incubators will lose their life too. And at that point, all ambulances will completely shut down because running out of fuel. All hospitals will shut down. That means over 2 million civilians in Gaza will denied even medical services, will die under the rubble because of the bombardment without having an ambulance to transfer them to the hospital, which should be shut down at that moment.
Nebal, Farsakh, thank you very much for that update describing the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which is frankly worsening at this point, and a ceasefire, well, that still being rejected by the Israeli forces and the authorities there. Nebal.